The first time Daniel Reed met the woman who would quietly change his life, he was standing in a grocery store aisle, comparing 2 brands of cereal with a calculator open on his phone. His 6-year-old son, Noah, was tugging his sleeve and asking, "Dad, can we get the one with the tiger on it?" His 10-year-old daughter, Ellie, stood beside the cart holding a school paper in her hand and trying not to look worried. Daniel forced a smile. "Maybe next time, buddy. Today, we get the one that fills the bowl, not the one that empties my wallet." Noah pouted for a second, then nodded. He was used to hearing things like that. Ellie quietly passed Daniel the paper. "Dad, the class trip money is due Friday." He looked at the number at the bottom and felt that familiar pressure in his chest. Rent was due in 4 days. Noah needed new shoes. The old water heater in their apartment had been making strange sounds. And now this. He folded the paper and slipped it into his jacket pocket. "I'll figure it out." That was what he always said. 3 years earlier, Daniel had lost his wife, Laura, after a sudden illness that moved faster than any doctor expected. Since then, every day of his life had become a careful balancing act. He worked as a maintenance man in a downtown office building from early morning until mid-afternoon. In the evenings, he sometimes picked up small handyman jobs in the neighborhood. He packed lunches, washed clothes, checked homework, and tried to be both mother and father to 2 children who still looked for their mother in little things. That day, after paying for the cheapest groceries he could manage, Daniel noticed a woman near the exit struggling with 2 torn shopping bags. Apples rolled across the floor. Without thinking, he handed Noah the grocery cart. "Stay with your sister." He walked over and knelt to pick up the apples. The woman looked embarrassed. "I'm so sorry," she said. "I thought the bag would hold." "It's okay," Daniel said. "Cheap bags turn on you when you need them most." She laughed softly. It was a tired laugh, like she hadn't had many reasons to laugh lately. Up close, she looked simple and elegant at the same time. She wore jeans, a plain sweater, and no jewelry except a small watch. Nothing about her suggested power or wealth. Just calm eyes and a kind face. Daniel moved some of his groceries and said, "Put your things in our cart. We're headed out anyway." "Oh no, I can't." "You can," he said gently. "It's either that or you chase apples into the parking lot." Noah grinned. "My dad saves everybody." The woman smiled at him. "Does he?" Ellie answered before Daniel could. "Mostly us." Something changed in the woman's face when she heard that, like the words had landed somewhere deep. Outside, Daniel helped carry her groceries to a small black car parked along the curb. He noticed she didn't have anyone with her. "No driver, no bodyguard, nobody, thank you," she said. "I'm May, Daniel." She looked at the children. "And these 2, Noah," said Noah proudly. Ellie said. May reached into one of her bags and pulled out a loaf of warm bakery bread. "For the apple rescue team." Daniel hesitated. "You don't have to do that." "I know," she said. "I want to." Noah whispered, "Dad, say yes." Daniel laughed for the first time that day. "Okay, thank you." That should have been the end of it. But 2 days later, Daniel saw her again at the public library. Ellie had entered a small writing contest there, and Daniel had brought both kids after school. He was tired, still in his work clothes, and worrying about how he would tell Ellie that the class trip might not happen this year. Noah was building a tower with children's blocks in the corner. Then he heard a voice behind him. "Looks like the apple rescue team works here now." He turned. It was May. She was holding a children's book and looked just as surprised to see him. "You come here to?" Daniel asked. "All the time," she said. "This place is quieter than my real life." He smiled. "That sounds like a story. Maybe one day." Over the next few weeks, they kept running into each other. At the library, at the small park near Daniel's apartment, once at the coffee shop where Daniel bought 1 plain coffee every Friday after payday as a little reward to himself. It became natural. May would sit with Ellie and ask about her stories. She would listen carefully when Noah explained, in great detail, why dinosaurs would make terrible house pets. She never acted impatient. She never checked her phone every 2 seconds. When Daniel spoke, she really listened. One evening at the park, while Ellie and Noah played on the swings, Daniel finally opened up. "My landlord raised the rent again," he said quietly. "Not by much. But when you're already counting every dollar, even a little feels big." May turned to him. "Do the kids know?" "Ellie knows something. She always knows. Noah doesn't. I'm trying to keep it that way." "And you handle all of this alone?" Daniel gave a tired half smile. "Most days, yes. Some days badly." May looked out at the children. "You don't seem like you're doing badly." He let out a breath. "I miss their mom in every decision, every school form, every fever at 2 in the morning, every moment when one of them needs something and I don't know if I'm giving the right answer." May didn't reply for a moment. Then she said softly, "You love them. That counts for more than perfect answers." Daniel looked at her then, really looked at her, and felt something warm and unfamiliar move through him. He didn't know much about May. She never talked in detail about work. She only said she was in business and that her days were often complicated. But with Daniel and the kids, she seemed lighter, freer, and without realizing it, Daniel began to look for her. For the first time since losing Laura, he felt his heart opening again. He just didn't know to whom. Trouble arrived the way it usually did in Daniel's life, quietly at first, then all at once. That it started at work. That one morning, the building manager called the maintenance and cleaning staff into a small meeting room. Daniel stood at the back, wiping grease from his hands with a rag. The manager cleared his throat. The parent company is reviewing all operations. There may be changes in staffing over the next month. Nothing is final yet. Nobody liked the sound of that. After the meeting, Daniel asked, "What kind of changes?" The manager gave him a look that said he knew more than he wanted to say. "Outsourcing. Budget cuts. We'll know soon." Daniel walked back to the boiler room with a heavy stomach. That night, he said nothing to the kids. Instead, he made boxed macaroni, helped Noah with spelling words, and listened to Ellie read a story she had written about a lighthouse that kept shining during storms. "It's about Mom, isn't it?" Daniel asked gently. Ellie looked down. A little. He swallowed hard. "She'd be proud of you." Ellie nodded, but her eyes filled anyway, as if that wasn't enough. Noah woke up 2 nights later with a high fever and a harsh cough. Daniel stayed up with him until dawn, pressing a cool cloth to his forehead and checking his breathing every 20 minutes. By morning, Daniel had missed work at the clinic. The doctor said it was a chest infection, nothing dangerous if treated early. But Noah needed medicine and rest. Medicine cost money. Time off work cost money. Everything seemed to cost more than Daniel had. That afternoon, May came by with soup after Daniel texted to say he couldn't meet at the library. "You didn't have to do this," he said as she stood at the door. "I know," she said, the same way she had at the grocery store. "I want to." She stepped inside. Their apartment was small but clean. Toys sat in one corner. Laundry was folded on the couch. A school project took up half the kitchen table. May took it all in quietly, not with pity but with respect. Noah was asleep. Ellie sat at the table coloring. "Hi, May," Ellie said. "Dad burned the toast today." Daniel sighed. "One time, twice," Ellie corrected. May laughed, and the sound softened the room. Later, while Ellie showered and Noah slept, Daniel and May sat in the kitchen with 2 mugs of tea. Daniel rubbed his forehead. "I feel like I'm always one problem away from everything falling apart." May looked at him carefully. "What if it doesn't?" He smiled without humor. Then it would be the first time. She reached across the table and placed her hand over his. It was a small gesture, but to Daniel, it felt enormous. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Then May said, almost in a whisper, "You make people feel safe, Daniel. Do you know that?" He looked at her hand over his and said the most honest thing he had said in years. "I haven't felt safe since my wife died." May's eyes filled, but she quickly looked away. A few days later, Ellie's teacher called. Ellie had not turned in the permission slip for the class trip. She had told a classmate she probably wasn't going because her dad already has too much to worry about. When Daniel heard that, something inside him broke. That evening, he found Ellie sitting on her bed, pretending to read. "Why didn't you tell me?" he asked softly. She kept staring at the book. "Because I heard you on the phone." "With who?" "The landlord, and then the doctor's office, and then work." Daniel sat beside her. "Ellie." Tears slid down her face. "I'm trying not to need so much, Dad." He pulled her into his arms, and she cried against his chest like she hadn't cried in a long time. "You'll listen to me," he said, his voice shaking. "You and your brother are never too much. Never. The bills are hard. Life is hard. But you are not the problem. Do you hear me?" She nodded. He kissed her hair and held her until she stopped trembling. The next day, Daniel picked up an extra repair job in the evening, then another on Saturday morning. He was exhausted, but he paid for Ellie's trip. When he told her, she smiled so hard she cried again. For a few hours, Daniel felt like maybe he was winning. Then came the worst day. He arrived at work and found a printed notice in his employee mailbox. Position under review. Final staffing decision next week. His hands went cold at lunch. The office building lobby was full of flowers, banners, and catering tables. Someone said the parent company's CEO was visiting for an internal event. Daniel barely listened. He was fixing a faulty light panel near the reception desk when he heard a voice from across the lobby. A familiar voice. He turned, and everything inside him stopped. There, walking through the glass doors in a dark tailored suit, surrounded by executives and assistants, was May, or rather, the woman he knew as May. People were calling her Ms. Bennett, the CEO. She saw him instantly. For 1 second, the whole lobby disappeared from her face. She looked only at him. Daniel stared back. Unable to move, an assistant smiled proudly beside him and said, "That's Maya Bennett. She owns the company." Owns the company. The same company reviewing his job. The same company threatening to take away the little stability his children had left. Daniel felt he'd rise in his chest, not just shock, but hurt. That evening, May came to his apartment. Daniel met her outside before she could knock. "You lied to me," he said. Her face was pale. "Daniel, I wanted to tell you when it was the right time." He laughed once, bitterly. "The right time? After I told you everything? After my kids trusted you? After I let myself?" He stopped. May's eyes filled with pain. "Please let me explain." "Explain what?" "That you didn't mention you're the CEO of the company. That might cut my job. That every conversation we had now feels different." It wasn't like that, she said. I didn't meet you because of work. I swear, then why hide it? Her voice broke. Because when people know who I am, they stop being real. They flatter me. They want something. They act careful. With you, for the first time in years, I felt like a normal person. Daniel shook his head, hurt washing through him. And did I feel normal to you while I was telling you I might lose my job? May had no answer fast enough. That silence hurt more than words. From inside the apartment, Noah started coughing hard. Daniel turned toward the door. Daniel, she whispered. He looked back at her, eyes wet. My son is sick. My daughter is scared. My job is hanging by a thread. And the one person I started to trust is a stranger standing in expensive shoes, telling me she wanted something honest. He opened the door, then stopped. I wish you had trusted me enough to be honest too. He went inside and closed the door. May stood there alone, and Daniel leaned against the other side, listening to Noah cough and feeling his own heart break in silence. The next week was one of the hardest of Daniel's life. May didn't come back. She sent one message. I'm sorry, truly, when you're ready, I'll tell you everything. Daniel never replied. At work, he kept his head down and finished every task given to him. He refused to let anyone see how shaken he was. At home, he focused on the children. Noah slowly got better. Ellie went on her class trip and came back smiling, clutching a bag of handmade souvenirs. But inside, Daniel was struggling. Part of him was angry. Part of him missed May, and part of him hated that both things were true at the same time. 3 days later, the building manager called him in. Daniel expected the worst. Instead, the manager said, the outsourcing plan has been paused. Daniel blinked, paused. There was a review from the top, a full one. Ms. Bennett wants all staffing decisions reconsidered, especially for long-term employees. She also approved a support program for hourly staff with families, flexible scheduling, emergency leave, and training opportunities. Daniel sat there in stunned silence. The manager leaned back. Honestly, I've never seen something move that fast. Daniel left the office with mixed emotions. He knew exactly who had caused that change that evening. After putting Noah to bed, Daniel found a letter slipped under his apartment door. It was from May. Not typed, handwritten. She wrote that her real name was Maya Bennett, and that she had inherited the company after her father died. She wrote that she had spent years living inside meetings, numbers, expectations, and endless pressure. She wrote that she often went out alone, dressed simply, because she needed moments where nobody saw a title before seeing her face. She admitted she should have told him sooner. She admitted she was afraid. And then she wrote something that made Daniel read the page twice. You won my heart before you ever knew my last name. Not because you tried, but because you never tried. You were kind when you had no reason to be. You were generous while carrying your own pain. You loved your children in a way that made me rethink my whole life. At the bottom, she wrote, I'm not asking you to forgive me quickly. I'm only asking for one honest conversation. If not for me, then for what we were before the truth got in the way. Daniel didn't sleep much that night. The next afternoon, he asked his neighbor, Mrs. Alvarez, to watch the kids for 1 hour and met Maya at the park where they had first sat together. She was already there on a bench, no suit this time, just a sweater, jeans, and a nervous look. Daniel sat down, leaving a little space between them. For a moment, neither spoke. Then Maya said, you deserved the truth from the beginning. Yes, Daniel said, I know. He looked at the playground. Why didn't you tell me after the first week, or the second? She took a slow breath. Because every day I waited, it became harder. And because I was selfish, I liked the version of me you knew, the one that wasn't carrying a title into every room. Daniel was quiet. I never used you, she continued, and I never got close to you because of your job. The staffing review was happening long before I met you. But after I met you, I couldn't ignore what those decisions meant to real families anymore. Not just yours. All of them. Daniel turned to her. So you changed it. I changed what was unfair, she said. Not for romance. Not for guilt. Because it should have been seen sooner. That mattered to him. It sounded honest. He looked down at his hands. I don't need saving, Maya. I know, she said gently. That's one of the reasons She stopped herself and smiled sadly. That's one of the reasons you matter to me. Daniel let out a long breath. I was angry, he admitted. But I was angrier because losing you hurt. Maya's eyes filled. It hurt me too, he gave a tired smile. No more secrets. No more secrets. At that exact moment, Noah came running toward them from the playground, with Ellie following behind. Mrs. Alvarez had clearly decided 1 hour was enough and had brought the kids over herself from the nearby benches. Dad, Noah shouted. Then he stopped when he saw Maya. His face lit up. May. Ellie slowed down, studying both adults with the sharp wisdom only children sometimes have. Are you okay now? She asked. Daniel glanced at Maya, then back at his daughter. We're trying, Ellie nodded, as if that was a fair answer. Maya crouched and opened her arms. Noah ran into them without hesitation. Children, Daniel thought, often know where safety lives before adults do. Over the next few months, life did not suddenly become perfect. Bills still came. Noah still got sick. Sometimes Ellie still missed her mother during school events and birthdays and quiet Sunday afternoons. Daniel still worked hard, but things slowly became steadier. The company offered Daniel training for a building systems certification, and with his experience, he earned a promotion to facilities coordinator 6 months later. The pay was better. The hours were more stable. He could finally eat dinner at home most nights. Maya kept her promise. No more lies. No more hidden parts of herself. She met the children openly. She came to Noah's school play. She read Ellie's stories and took them seriously. She never tried to replace Laura. She simply showed up with honesty and care. One evening, Daniel stood in the kitchen washing dishes while Ellie worked at the table and Noah built a cardboard rocket on the floor. Maya walked in carrying dessert. Noah shouted, "May brought the good bread lady cake." Everyone laughed. Daniel looked around the room, the children, the noise. The simple warmth of it and felt something he had not felt in years. Peace. Not the kind that comes from having everything solved. The kind that comes from no longer carrying everything alone. Later that night, after the kids were asleep, Daniel and Maya sat on the small apartment balcony. "You know," Daniel said, "if someone had told me a year ago that I'd fall for a woman without knowing she was a CEO, I would have laughed at them." Maya smiled. "And if someone had told me I'd fall for a maintenance man who shops with a calculator and makes burnt toast, I might have laughed too." "Only once," Daniel said. "Twice," she teased. He laughed, then grew quiet. "I think Laura would have wanted this," he said softly. "Not you replacing her, just us finding life again." Maya reached for his hand. "That I'm grateful life was brave enough to come back." Daniel looked up at the night sky and squeezed her hand. For the first time in a long time, the future did not feel like something to fear. It felt like something to walk toward.